Good afternoon. My name is Charity Colleen Krause. It's about a little before 11:30 a.m. on February 21st, 2023. I want to share with you something. I've been working on it for a while, I guess you could say. But first, I want you to take note of something very important. Do you see this date? What's that say? April 1st, 2021. Exactly 1 year later, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals presented to me via my email, with advance notice, by the way, and a light blue backing in the background, what was allegedly a judgment in a matter for which I had been denied by the court an appeal. I contacted the court and let them know it was an unlawful, and I have other voice records identifying what I mean specifically by unlawful and unconstitutional proceeding. And I told them I was not going to be able to read the determination until such time as somebody contacted me to confirm that it was actually issued by the court. I believe it's a forgery. This book was put out exactly 1 year before that date. What is this book, you might ask? It's called Towards an Intellectual History of Ukraine, an anthology of Ukrainian thought from 1710 to 1995, edited by Ralph Lindheim and George Essen Lukji. I think that's how you say the name. Unfortunately, I may be mispronouncing it. I'd like to share with you a couple of items I've already reviewed, and I intend to review further and more formally starting today. The first selection in the anthology is an abridgment of what is called the Benderi Constitution. I will read for you what the authors have introduced in regard to what is translated, at least, as the Benderi Constitution. The original document of the Benderi Constitution was written in intricate Latin. There exists also a translation into Old Ukrainian. The newly elected Hetman Pilip Orlik succeeded in exile the late Hetman Ivan Mazepa, who had fled to the Moldavian town of Benderi, or Bender, after the defeat of his forces and those of Charles XII at the Battle of Poltava in 1709. Orlik, with the remnants of the Cossack Starshina officer corps, represented a Cossack government in exile. The Constitution confirms the status of the ancient Cossack nation and its struggle against Moscow. The Cossacks, defenders of the Orthodox faith, nevertheless are guaranteed the supremacy of a Kievan metropolitan, one independent of Moscow's influence. Many rights of the Cossacks are provided for, and the protection of the Swedish king is assured. The next selection, which I have reviewed before, and as I said, I intend to review more formally starting today, is Section 17, Draft Constitution for the Ukrainian Society in the Free Union by Mikhailo Drahomanov. There is no introduction to this draft constitution, but in here it does denote that it was translated, and in 1884. It also says there are three parts. Part 1, the aims of society, the aims of the society, at least as it's translated. Part 2, the society's means of action. And Part 3, the society's inner organization. The third selection is actually one I have not yet formally reviewed, and I have not even read the excerpts that are available yet in this book, though I have reviewed elements of it from versions I've found online. Selection 40, Constitution of Ukraine Draft, submitted by the Constitutional Commission of the Parliament of Ukraine after additional consideration as a result of public discussion. I will read the introduction. It's the first time I've read this introduction. Together with later submissions, the draft of Ukraine's constitution dating from May 1993 was long debated by the Ukrainian parliament. The sections of that draft reprinted here and edited by us from the June 1993 official English translation deal with guarantees of political freedoms the Ukrainians had never possessed. They emphasize human rights, liberties, and the rule of law, by which all citizens of Ukraine, regardless of their nationality or religion, will be protected. They illustrate amply the legitimate fear of the reemergence of a Soviet-style regime. At the same time, the proposed draft shows some fear of a capitalistic system and it's providing for full employment, housing, and health protection. Much attention is given to the definition of judiciary and legislative powers. All in all, today's Ukrainian nation state displays in its proposed constitution, which to our knowledge is not radically different from the final draft, a nationalism tempered by humanism and a concern with the ideal of a civil society. Now, I've just read that introduction with you. It's the first time I've heard it. And it appears that this was a translation provided by the Ukrainian Legal Foundation in 1993. It's excerpted. And I do have a printout of printed out selections of what is purportedly, at least, an official translation of the current constitution of the Ukraine. I will note, however, this book was published by the University of Toronto Press in association with the Shevchenko Scientific Society Incorporated, and it was published in 1996. Spot check, the page I open up to is a selection from a Mikhailo Hrushevsky called A Free Ukraine. Is Ukraine only for Ukrainians? I will say I've actually reviewed this section. I've actually reviewed a number of selections in this book outside of the three I just identified. I will also say that once I acquired this book, within 10 days, there were very, very few books about the Ukraine left at the place where I acquired this. Within 30 days, there were none. And until this time, there have remained none. I will, however, begin a more formal study of this starting today. I will most likely only keep voice notes, and insofar as there may be any formal consideration, I would ask that any who might be privy to my contemplations respond in accordance with what would be understood to be an acceptable protocol. And if there's any disagreement with my understanding, including because it's provided in translation, I request that I be offered correction commensurate with the need and in a manner for which we both can be held accountable as necessary.